Right, so Mark Gurman continues giving us last minute tidbits regarding WWDC, and this time it's regarding the Macs we can expect at this event. And so let's delve into it. So Gurman began by saying this year's WWDC is going to be one of Apple's longest events ever and could exceed 2 hours, with the main areas of focus being the headset, the usual software announcements, as well as several new Macs. Now, the use of several is certainly interesting because for quite some time we've been under the assumption only the 15-inch M2 MacBook Air was launching at this event, but Gurman's clearly hinting at multiple models launching at next week's event. Now, unfortunately, Gurman being Gurman, he does not explicitly tell us what other models could launch, but he's given us a hint, and it's based on the fact 3 new Macs have been added to a Find My configuration file on Apple's backend. The identifiers that have been found are Mac 14,8, Mac 14,13, and Mac 14,14. And interestingly, the file does suggest these are desktop Macs, since they don't need to be actively tracked via Find My like portable Macs. And so Gurman, based on this, does suggest Mac 14,13 and Mac 14,14 are new desktop machines running the M2 Max and Ultra. Now, the model that immediately comes to my mind that even Gurman hints at is the Mac Studio. This currently has the older M1 Max and M1 Ultra, and also recently we heard about the fact Apple could begin letting consumers trade in their current Mac Studios on the same day as WWDC, and that usually means we're going to see a new model launch soon that's replacing the existing version. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. Also, it would make sense to release these new Mac Studios now because WWDC is a more prosumer / developer focused event, and this Mac's very much for that market. But also we know M3's on the horizon, and so they should update the Studio with the Max and the Ultra before this transition. So those are 2 of the 3 Macs that have been discovered, but what's Mac 14,8? Well, previous rumors have suggested this is the Mac Pro, so the fact Gurman says nothing about this in today's report makes me think development for the Mac Pro has been pushed back, or possibly even halted. And it makes sense, to be fair, because we've heard a lot about the compromises Apple was planning to make with the Mac Pro because of development issues. They first of all could not give us the Extreme chip we wanted, and so this apparently was going to have the same Ultra variant the Studio has, and also this machine would lack any expandability, which is annoying for the target demographic for this machine. There were also initial plans for an external GPU, I believe, but that also was scrapped. And with this also apparently using the same exact design as the current Mac Pro, I've expressed many times why releasing this machine never made sense when the Mac Studio's already a thing, and so it seems Apple might have finally listened, and what I'm guessing Apple's gonna do now is release the M2 Max and Ultra SoC in the Studio, and then wait until M3 to give us a new Extreme chip for the larger Mac Pro. Because there's really no rush anymore to get the Mac Pro out as soon as possible, since number 1, Apple's already missed the timeline they initially told us for this Apple Silicon transition, and so they might as well take their time with this. But also number 2, a lot of consumers who would usually buy the Mac Pro are happy with the Studio, so there's no point reusing the exact same chip in the much more expensive Mac Pro. Instead, they should focus on the highest end pros who still need more horsepower and the expandability, and give us M3 Extreme with an external GPU and upgradable components, and basically take advantage of the much bigger chassis this machine has compared to the Studio. Plus, of course, we know M3 is going to be a big upgrade since it's going to be based on a 3nm process, and so that's going to give it a major boost in performance and efficiency, so it would be kind of annoying if M2 came to the Mac Pro just before this transition. And since the Mac Pro is all about maximizing performance over every other aspect, it would massively benefit this machine if, of course, it's based on M3. So I'm really hoping they don't release the Mac Pro till they give us something incredible for the high-end pros, and for the time being a simple refresh for the Mac Studio with the M2 Max and M2 Ultra makes perfect sense, and I'm happy the Studio is not being killed off or neglected like some initial rumors had suggested. And so to recap guys, the 3 Macs we're expecting at this point are the 15-inch MacBook Air with the M2, the M2 Max, Mac Studio, and the M2 Ultra Mac Studio. And yeah, I know these are not massive refreshes, but Apple needs to give us minor upgrades like this because they're kinda in a desperate situation where Mac sales have massively declined, and so any new model at this point, even if it's a minor refresh, could increase sales. And to be fair, I think even with the M2, the 15-inch MacBook Air should take off because, much like myself, I know many who want a larger regular MacBook since they want the bigger screen and the bigger battery of the 16-inch, but without the extra performance and the cost. And yes, I know M1 Pro 16-inch MacBook Pros have massively dropped in price and now can be found for $1,800 or pounds, but a base 15-inch is still going to be cheaper, and that's the model most are going to get, even if it only has 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. As for the Mac Studio, I think a simple upgrade to M2 Max or M2 Ultra could entice prosumers. The Ultra specifically is now rumored to have a 24-core CPU, a 76-core GPU, and a max of 192 gigs of RAM, which is pretty ludicrous and should be enough for most who are looking to buy the Mac Pro instead. And those who need more power would rather have an M3 Extreme Mac Pro than, of course, a compromised M2 Ultra based Mac Pro that has no expandability and no external GPU options. But by far the best thing about these new M2 versions of the Mac Studio launching is the fact the old Mac Studio should now get cheaper, and that's great because we know how good the current Mac Studio is, and for those who don't need the performance upgrades, I'm sure the old models are going to get price cuts. Right now, I believe the Mac Studio with the M1 Max on Apple's refurbished store sells for $1,800, so maybe it can now be $1,500 once these M2 variants launch, which is a pretty insane deal because it's still a very powerful machine and it offers a plethora of useful ports. Also, I do wonder, guys, are we going to see new displays at WWDC? Because we've heard a lot about a new Pro display in the works, but nothing has yet to release, and so if Apple plans to launch one, it would make sense to release it now with the Mac Studio. And to be honest, it's a pretty simple refresh because they don't have to change much. The current Pro display is still fine for most prosumers, but all it needs is 120Hz and maybe a price cut, and that would be some nice changes. Also, I know there was a 27-inch mini LED panel in the works, but according to Ross Young, that's not releasing anytime soon, so if I were to guess, that could launch with the Mac Pro we eventually get with the M3 Extreme. Finally, I do want to quickly mention that on Geekbench, people have begun spotting listings of Macs running macOS 14. Now, for those wondering, these are not unreleased Macs, these are existing models. I believe one of them was the Mac Studio with the M1 Max, and the other was an M1 Max MacBook Pro, so these models are likely being used internally by employees to test this future release. Now, surprisingly, we have not heard much regarding this year's macOS refresh. It seems like we're getting a refinement year, which, to be honest, is not a problem because Apple making their software bug-free is always a great thing, and recently their software has been a mess. And finally, for those waiting for M3, Gurman's once again said, we're not getting that at this event, and to back this up, there are no shipping delays for the M1 iMac, the M2 MacBook Air 13-inch, and the base MacBook Pro 13-inch. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.